Welcome back to Adventure Unfiltered with your host, Lorna. So if you've been listening since the beginning, thank you for coming back. And if this is your first episode, this podcast exists for one reason: to talk about adventure as it really is. Not just the moments that look good on a screen, but the decisions, responsibilities and values that shape how we move through wild places. So as this episode goes out in February 2026, we have just passed 2,000 downloads for season 1, and that still amazes me. Not because of the number, but because it tells me people are choosing the depth. They're choosing conversations that slow things down, asking better questions, and going beyond achievement. So no, we're not back quietly, we're back with intention. And season 2 begins somewhere that has always held a special place in my heart: the East Lothian coast. I spent huge parts of my childhood here, long summers, walking the shoreline, rock pulling, scrambling, paddling, swimming, exploring, cold hands, sandy rocks, wet sleeves, endless curiosity. Long before I had the language for adventure, this place was teaching me what it meant to feel at home outside. I've come back to these same stretches of coast again and again over the years, and now I find myself rediscovering them with my own family. The coastline hasn't changed. I have. And so has my relationship with adventure, which makes today's guest the perfect person to open season 2. Stevie Boyle is the co-founder and director of Ocean Vertical, but more than that, he's a guide, educator, and someone who takes responsibility in the outdoors seriously. With decades of experience across paddleboarding, coast-steering, mountaineering, and instructor training, Stevie works at the intersection of adventure, ethics, and care. What struck me when I first encountered Ocean Vertical years ago wasn't just what they offered, it was how they talked about it. Adventure wasn't performative, it wasn't exclusive, it was thoughtful, values-led and rooted in respect for people and for place. So this conversation goes far beyond paddleboards and peaks. We talk about risk, ego, fear, decision-making, responsibility, and what it takes to adventure in a way that's sustainable, honest, and human. So let's go. This is Stevie Boyle with Paddleboards, Peaks, and Wild Ethics. I am sat here today with Mr. Stevie Boyle from Ocean Vertical, and we are sitting in the Ocean Vertical offices?
Headquarters.
Stables. And this is quite a vast difference from the first time that I came to Ocean Vertical headquarters, which was in fact a picnic bench at Fox Lake.
That's right, yeah.
Because that's where
we were working out of a shipping container and using the Fox Lake changing rooms. They were really good to us back then, actually, Fox Lake, allowing us to meet clients and use changing rooms and all that kind of stuff. Because literally where we are now, the shipping container was in the car park, and it wasn't even a car park.
Yeah.
And then over time, we've kind of taken parts of the building to use as their own.
This building is something else. It's gorgeous. How can I describe it? It's not a shed. It's like it's a building with stables that's been converted into headquarters.
Yeah.
So we've got a cosy fire, and then it's a big kind of vast space behind us. One of the things that really caught my eye about Ocean Vertical was how ethical and sustainable the company is, and how you're all about keeping wild places wild.
Yeah.
And I'm really keen to know where all that came from.
The way that I see it and the way that I wanted to create Ocean Vertical as a company is that adventure has so many parts to it. Coast-steering, paddleboarding, surfing, they're kind of activities, but the product that we sell is actually the outdoors. So it's like these open spaces, natural spaces. So for example, we were coast-steering the other day and we're taking out bits of net, like plastic bottles, all that kind of stuff, just through, we wouldn't leave it there anyway, but it's a habit now that we just grab stuff and take it out. So that idea that we can improve places that we're working in as well as building connection. So the people that are coming in and going coast-steering or paddleboarding, us educating people builds that connection more. So when we're coast-steering, we're looking at the plants and animals that live there. You know, the whole thing about trawling in marine protected areas, if more people knew how bad that was because of a connection to the ocean or these places, that wouldn't have been put through as quickly as it did. It just kind of like, there was a large consultation, but really there was no kickback from the public about trawling in marine protected environments, because unfortunately a lot of people don't have that connection to the ocean. So we're trying to do that, and then also the equipment we're wearing, we want to make as little impact as possible, and then also the people who are making those things. So it's this, Adventure has like this ecosystem around it that we try and acknowledge as much as we can and make good choices, or as good choices as possible when we're going out or consuming products or buying stuff. So that's really why we call Ocean Vertical like an ethical adventure company. So we're trying to do all those things, which is hard sometimes, but then it steers our decision making. So sometimes it feels quite easy to do it as well.
I mean, obviously from experiencing the coaststeering and the paddleboarding with you, it's really kind of high energy, adrenaline filled adventures. I absolutely love Ocean Vertical and I absolutely love what it stands for. Can you talk a wee bit more about that emotional, environmental connection that you have? If you think back to your childhood, was there like something that happened that made you really interested in the ocean and adventure and sustainability?
Yeah. I don't remember a time where I've not been excited by wildlife and things that live near us. Even like really sort of like what we would call low-key wildlife stuff, like turning over a stone as a kid and like looking what's there and then trying to identify it in books or whatever it might be. So I don't remember a time where that's not been exciting to me, that connection. I don't think I've ever lost it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
In terms of my journey, that transition was in high school. I had a ski accident when I was 17 and I had to get reconstructive surgery, and that stopped me playing rugby pretty much for a very long time, and then ultimately I didn't play rugby again. During my recovery from that operation, I was selected to go to California, to Yosemite on an exchange trip.
Oh,
so I
what
spent,
a place.
Well, exactly. So I was actually in Martinez, and that's twinned with Dunbar because of the John Muir connection. Father of sort of ecology and glaciology and all that kind of stuff, and ultimately conservation itself. And that really sort of like blew my mind in terms of like what else was in the world and what it looked like. That was probably one of the things that was like, actually, I can't do what I thought I was going to do, which was play rugby forever and ever. It was very exciting at the time. At that time, in the late 90s, professional rugby was actually a thing. So it was kind of like, oh, you can actually do that. So there was the hope in sort of playing rugby at quite high level, district level and things like that. And then, like you say, doing something that I love, which is skiing, and still do love skiing, took that away.
How did you cope with that at such a young age?
I don't think I did that well, to be honest with you.
If you think that's what you're going to do.
Yeah. I wasn't very good at school. I didn't enjoy it. I used to skive to go surfing. Do you know what I mean? So it kind of like, it all made sense. And probably for the people observing me, like the teacher saying, oh, by the way, you can do that for a living. And then very quickly, support from my family being like, well, we need to, this is going to happen. So there was Telford College, Edinburgh College now, had a long-standing course, which at the time was called Physical Recreation and Outdoor Pursuits, which I got onto. There was only about 12 of us, I think, like a minibus load. They got onto the course, but I got onto it, and then that's what started it all.
And then what happened after college with that qualification?
Big outdoor centres, those sort of like Dunans Camp and things like that. So massive outdoor centres with a huge turnover of kids. But it gave me an amazing foundation in soft skills. Because actually I probably wasn't that confident going into the course and then going into working. Building rapport with people super quick, because unless you can do that with 30 kids for a week, nobody really has a good time, like including yourself. Do you know what I mean? It's hard work. So that was sort of like, for me, a really good way of getting to understand people outdoors and doing adventures. Like, I think those residential experiences for kids are like ridiculously important, and we need to keep these residential experiences going for forever.
I couldn't agree more. I said to my daughter, she went on camp in primary 7, and I mean, of course, we stay in the Highlands, so camp is like 4 miles away because there's so many outdoor centres. But she went along, and I said to her before she went, I'm like, this is going to change your life. She's like, what do you mean, Mum? And I said, you will grow so much from this experience. She thought I meant that it's going to change her life, and all of a sudden she's going to become like a hiker or really enjoy these family hikes that we drag her out on. But it wasn't. It's about growth, like personal growth, independence, not just that, but actually having that connection with the outdoors and connection with nature as well, and how that makes you feel. The reason I knew that, because I was the same in 3rd year at school. We went to Dalguys for like 3 nights or something. And when I went there, I had to come away thinking that I wanted to be like an outdoor instructor because it was so much fun. But it does, it changes you, and it gives you that connection with friends and, you know, that independence away from home.
Definitely an emotional attachment to memories.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know any kid that hasn't been on camp that has a core memory or a core experience of that. How did we come to Ocean Vertical?
Yeah. So
from there,
how do we do that? The way that I did things back then was obviously I did that instead of going to university. So there was like playing really hard, partying and work, super intense, going out to get other outdoor qualifications, spending loads of time outside, and then realised very quickly that there was a shelf life to it. And as I was toying with not doing outdoor stuff at all and going back to what I had kind of been successful at school, which was like visual communication stuff, so like art and design and graphic communication and all that kind of stuff, there was like, I can't do this for much longer. A project in East Lothian started up looking for a development worker. So it was youth work, using adventure, volunteering, kind of conservation work to engage young people and sort of do personal and social development stuff. And then I got that job and stayed there for 15 years. Mm-hmm. I kind of look like what I do now, which is like a middle-aged, married person with kids with a beard. And the ability to engage well was kind of getting more and more distance. My baseline of experiences was so far removed from some of those kids that it was very hard to find for them to be like, well, why on earth would I engage with this person? Why am I like, what are you doing here, mate? Kind of stuff. So I really quickly realized that I probably could do something else and be really successful. And the formal education model and commercial outdoor stuff kind of hadn't been done. So therefore, that's what I tried to do with Ocean Vertical. Bring it in to bring the two together. And I think using coaching, using kind of personal and social development very sort of loosely in a commercial setting for the outdoors really does work.
You talk a lot about rewilding wild places. Mm-hmm. What does that mean to you?
Yeah,
why is it so important?
I think that's changed over the years for me. It really has. I think now my biggest focus is on the sea. Whereas before I was like, you know, leave no trace, and I've planted a lot of trees in my career. Done a lot of tree planting as part of conservation stuff and things like that. And then I think also the terms of rewilding have kind of changed now too, where there's now huge projects where they do leave it as it is and allow the stuff to grow. So I think for me, my biggest focus has now been on the ocean. I put a picture on social media and it had been recycling day in Dunbar, and it was in Dunbar Harbour. And of course, they had loads of plastic bottles that gone into the harbour, and they were like, that's terrible, we should chat about this. So we chatted and things like that, and I was like, but that's not that's the superficial. So the plastic bottles in the sea is a real issue. Sort of ghost fishing nets is a real issue, and we can definitely do things about that. And there's people locally, and Ocean Vertical itself have gone out to try and help local fishermen get their kit back out of the sea and off beaches and all that kind of stuff. And I do see that as a big part of rewilding. But I think the stuff that was in the bottles, bleach for example, cleaners, the things that we use in our showers and down our toilets is also a big issue. in terms of ocean health. Talking about that and trying to do things to help organisations that's a big part of is also really important. So that for me is my focus. So for example, trolling within marine conservation areas, which is just as far like I don't even understand why that's a thing. You know what I mean? It's like that does marine protected areas and then bottom trawling.
Yeah, so is that legal in these areas
It's
then?
legal, yeah. So they're not protected from that, which is just bonkers. And legally not protected now. I was out in Ireland doing National Coaststeering Charter assessment with a friend of mine, Andy, at Hebridean Pursuits. So we were out there and we were chatting to the folk who wanted to be guides and were being assessed and talking about seaweed. And their knowledge of seaweed was really good, but what they didn't understand is 70% of our oxygen comes from the sea. So kelps and seaweeds provide 70% of the Earth's oxygen. So if we trawl them out, then we're reducing our ability to produce oxygen. So these coastal margins that we see, which are quite big coastal margins, they're super important not only to commercial fishing, because commercial fishing, all the things that live in there then go out to sea and become bigger. And then obviously the things they're living in, the kelps and seaweeds, are producing our oxygen. So that for me now is like where my focus is for rewilding. So making that as wild as possible, trying to protect these areas so they can regenerate as fast as possible, which they do, is now where my focus is for these wild places to be improved, because that is where we're working. Coast-steering, paddleboarding, all these coastal journeys is where we're
Yeah, and I love the idea that you're kind of using education as well. So when people are coming and they're coast-steering and paddleboarding and things, that they're learning about it too. But it was really interesting what you were saying there about the bottles, and it's about what's in them.
Yeah.
What can I do? So what can people that are listening to this do to help you support in that mission of making things better?
So I think acknowledging their poisonous is the first one. So it's like, if you're using something that you know is harmful, then you just reduce the amount you use. So that's one thing. I'm not telling you to stop putting bleach down your toilet, because sometimes toilets need bleach down them. But we can use things that are more biodegradable. So what you can do is start to transition some of those things that are really harmful chemicals like bleach and be like, well, what's an alternative to that? Can I use something else that's environmentally friendly? So I'm not saying chuck out all your stuff. I'm saying, like, if you just acknowledge something and say, actually, maybe I shouldn't be using as much, then it's like, well, okay, so I've stopped using as much, but then how about I stop buying that particular brand and look at a different brand that maybe doesn't have those chemicals in it. So it's that sort of acknowledgement of things. So now shampoos that I use or soaps that I use are like, what's the natural ingredients? Are they biodegradable? So it's like not about being like, oh, I'm just going to not wash forever, going to smell
just less chemicals.
Just, yes.
You have been on many an adventure to Nepal, to Dunbar, to lots of places. Adventure often brings out our raw self. Can you share a moment in the wild where you felt completely vulnerable?
As you can imagine, with adventure, you do get scared.
Yes.
Chasing logbook days has put me probably in the highest places of risk that I've probably ever been in. So pushing your limits, pushing boundaries, and one of them was in winter when we had them, and I can't remember how old I was. I was definitely in my early 20s, so fairly fresh. I was probably in between getting my summer mountain leader assessment and exploring winter, basically. So quite early on in my sort of outdoor career. And I went snowholing on my own.
Okay.
So
that was clever.
Automatically you're like, oh, okay. Being solo in the mountains is kind of expected from these qualifications. Maybe not as quite as extreme as that. But we also have to understand that now 4G signal, I've had full 4G signal updating Instagram in a snow hole in the Cairngorms at 1,000 meters.
That's insane, isn't it?
But back then that was not a thing. No. I don't even know if I had a mobile phone. There was definitely no sort of like commercial GPSs available at that time that weren't like, they were out of my reach. They'd probably been about £600 at that point. So we're talking about maybe around 2000. maybe sort of that sort of time. Anyway, I'm kind of just trying to justify all these things I'm about to say.
I know, I'm waiting on it. You're building up to it, Stevie.
Anyway, I dug myself into a snow hole.
Literally.
Dug myself in. And for whatever reason, the weather forecast, I hadn't really probably looked at, maybe. Anyway, it was a stunning evening. And then during the night, that changed fairly rapidly and went from stars to just whiteout blizzard with a lot of snow. And I had to dig myself out of that snow hole like 3 or 4 times.
Oh gosh.
So I was like waking, did I sleep? I probably did sleep because I remember waking up a couple of times and being like, oh, and having to dig myself out of this snow hole. During the night, at some point, my compass developed a monumental bubble in it. And of course, I didn't have a spare. So I had this navigation issue in a whiteout and digging myself out. I also had to wait then because I was like, well, am I really going to do micro navigation with a broken compass in the dark in a whiteout? The answer is definitely no to that. So that was one good decision I made. Anyway, I was up at about 1,000 meters on the Cairngorm Plateau, and I wasn't that far away from being safe. As I dug myself out of the snow hole for the last time, I was looking at my watch and being like, well, I've got daylight at least. So I dug myself out, and obviously it was white out, so it was still pretty dim. And I put my rucksack out of this quite a small hole, and it slid down, and I lost sight of it.
Oh no.
And I was like, oh, that was a little bit of a mistake. But knowing if where I was really wasn't really that dangerous, so I just slid down, and obviously gravity and me found my rucksack, which was fine. I started walking using this broken compass, and after a fairly significant amount of time, I realized that the wind direction had changed. And obviously with experience, I was like, that doesn't make any sense that the wind direction has changed.
Yeah, you realise it was you that had changed direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had gone from going the correct direction using the broken compass bearing to being completely turned round, and then obviously not really paying attention. Again, not good navigational stuff. Not paying attention to my timing or my direction. I was completely lost. Had no concept of where I really was or anything like that on the Cairngorm Plateau. And in that sort of situation, there's like, the Cairngorm Plateau is sort of like peppered with cliffs and of significance all around that area. So without really knowing where I was, and being in my early 20s, kind of sat down and struggled not to cry a little bit.
Yeah, of course. No, so you would.
So I was like totally on my own, completely lost, with a rough idea of kind of where I might be to do with what the ground was doing, but this broken compass. So the realization was like, you are pretty fucked up here. You've like made massive mistakes. Had to gather my thoughts, and then sat down and had to come up with a plan. No one really knew where I was. Certainly nowhere I knew where my other position was. It would be like, oh, Stevie's not back, and then it'd probably be hours on top of that. So you're looking at like 16 hours of basically sitting, probably dying of exposure.
Yeah, freezing.
Freezing. And then coming up with a plan, which was just using the compass, super course navigation. My plan was to sort of like hit the corries and hope that there was the boulders and stuff on top had been scoured.
Right. Yeah.
That was the only thing, because in a whiteout, you can't see up, you don't know which way's up, down, left, right, or anything like that. The only indicator I had was the pressure on the bottoms of my shoes. That was the ground. So everything else, if you've been drunk enough, which I'm sure everyone listening to this has, when you get bed spins, your body feels like it's spinning around your head. And as long as, and that's what I was getting, that feeling is what I was getting, unless I concentrated on the feeling of pressure on the soles of my feet. Because you didn't know where you were. There's no visual reference at all. There was so much snow falling and on the ground that there was nothing there. You may as well have had my eyes closed.
So what did you do?
So that's what I did. I came up with this plan, and luckily for me, as I followed a really coarse bearing. I managed to hit some boulders, and then after these scoured boulders, there was nothing. So that was the edge of the corrie.
That's the edge, isn't it?
So then I was like, right, thank God for that. That risk, monumental risk, because if I just kept on walking, if those boulders hadn't been scoured, that was the risk. Then I was just like, would have been off the cliff.
I mean, that's a significant drop.
Oh yeah. So, but that was the only thing that I could. That was my plan as a 20-year-old. Was like, this is it. If this doesn't go right, so it's massive risk, but the benefit was there. So there was enough benefit. There was enough sort of like in my mind. There was enough. There was enough of a chance that was going to work for me to take that risk.
Yeah.
My goalkeeper was the lift infrastructure of Cairngorm Mountain.
Yeah.
And then once I found that, then I knew that I could just follow a lift line.
Yeah.
Back to the car park, basically. Yeah. That was probably one of my standout parts of my outdoor career that then has informed everything after that.
Well, it does, because it's a huge lesson, isn't it?
Yeah, it's massive. Yeah.
What came through to allow you to kind of push through?
So the feeling of being completely alone without any help was like, that was the catalyst, where it was like, if you don't do something about it, there's no one here to do that. So then it was obviously that was after the sort of like potential like emotional breakdown, which was like, you need to not like do that, because that does not serve you well in this situation. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you can cry about it, but that would just be wasting time. So that kind of snapped me out of it, where it's like, ooh, someone needs to help me. And it's like, actually, son, no one's helping you. So it's like
that inner dialogue.
Yeah. So it's like, you need to get yourself, and it's that duality, isn't it? Where it's like, you've got what's happening. It's like, oh, I wish there was someone here to help me. How silly was this? And it's like, well, it is silly. There's a whole load of shit that you should have not done, but you're here, so therefore you have to get yourself out. There's nothing immediate that's going to happen. You're not going to walk off an edge. You're not going to do something stupid if you sat still. So that gave me the space to be like, all right, have a little cry about it, and then let's make a plan. And what's that plan going to be?
I mean, that was a pretty harsh life lesson to like learn. Did you have a better understanding after that about how you deal with fear?
One of the weird things is that I've spoken about, and like that in that moment, it made me realize that I don't believe in a God that's going to protect me. So that was one sort of life lesson, whether people think that's a good thing or not. So there at no point did I think, if I get out of this, I'll be a good boy. Kind of like something external, like hoping that something external was going to help me, because I knew that probably wasn't going to happen. Mm-hmm. So on reflection, I didn't even think about that at the time. But on reflection, that was like, a lot of people say, they don't believe, and that was my like, I actually, looking back on that, it didn't even come into my realm of sort of like possibilities or any reference to that whatsoever. It was like, you're on your own, you need to sort this out. So I suppose then on what did I learn from that was about being more self-sufficient, about that if you don't check weather forecasts and things like that, it's not been I was like a passenger on my own journey. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was just going through emotion and ego-driven. It was all about ego. So I talk about that a lot when I'm talking about, not that incident itself, but in adventure, on personal adventure, ego is not, it kind of can help you, but also if you are just a passenger to it, that's when it's really hard. So, and I definitely do have an ego, but I always am reflective about checking it and being like, well, okay, but you've got confidence in this, but what is backing it up? So it's like, you can have an ego, but what is it? And I suppose that is probably through my career, is like, you can have that, but what is it that is informing those choices? Is it just like, what's the worst that can happen? I'm great, nothing bad's gonna happen. Now that's fine if you can back it up with evidence. So it's like, this is why I've been successful, because of these things, as opposed to like, it should be given to me because of my ego. sort of thing.
That's very self-aware.
Yeah, I
as
think,
well.
I don't know if I've always been like that. Obviously, I wasn't during that pre-trip, but then I think now that has informed that's informed my sort of how I navigate the world.
You have your adventures and your offer here in Scotland, but you obviously have the expeditions abroad in Nepal. Do you notice a change in your customers and a change in people when they've had that experience with Ocean Vertical with you guys?
Yeah, people's confidence in themselves is noticeable. And obviously there's like fun one-off activities, and coastering isn't a one-off activity, but like people who come in once, I mean, hopefully go away with a greater understanding of what they're capable of, and also hopefully the environment they've been in.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, I just want to make people independent outdoor people. So if I can, it's very easy for like instructors and guides and coaches to keep things in. And I think some people do it because they don't want to show a bit of vulnerability. So if you don't understand why someone's made a decision, like a guide or a coach or an instructor has made a decision based on risk, then you can't learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
So I have always said things out loud. And it's part of our duty of care as an instructor or a guide to say, well, actually, that thing over there could really hurt you, so don't go near it. Especially in like the winter mountaineering stuff, moving through an environment, there's always like the risk assessment being like, hey, that or that or that, or the person at the back or this. So we should always be on sort of like amber, orange sort of thing, not red, but sort of like that awareness. And if you're not saying to people, it's like, oh, Lorna, your shoelaces are undone, or it looks like your crampons are coming undone, until it's too late. That's a duty of care problem. But you might not notice, for example, if the weather's really good, cornices. So it's like in an avalanche forecast, if we don't go like, oh, that's a cornice from the avalanche forecast, and this is a danger of that, or like, can you see this change of snow from uber hard to soft? That's where it's been blowing in, that kind of stuff, which is what a mountaineer should always be looking for, all of these different, or even the sound of snow. You know, if you're not saying, oh, the sound of snow makes me think this, we're going to have to get our crampons on because freezing level is at 500 meters and we're at like 375, so we want to do this. If we're not saying that to folk and articulating it, they're not going to learn. And ultimately, they're not going to become confident to be independent.
Mm-hmm. This conversation's been absolutely fantastic. I've learned so much.
Well, that's good.
But if you could leave one message for the next generation of adventurers, knowing what you know and what you've learned about the ocean and about the land, what would that one bit of advice be?
Oh, that's a tough one. If you look at sort of elite athletes who are in sort of doing stuff, surfing or climbing or whatever, what they have, which is super different to us, is the ability to watch themselves and watch all other people and improve from that. Does that make sense? We didn't have that growing up. We might have had like a surf film that was the only surf film that anyone watched, or a climbing one. Yeah, absolutely. So like Big Wednesday, or like then there was like these iconic sort of like climbing films that were just put on repeat, like DVDs or VHS or whatever.
Yeah.
But now everyone's got a camera, everyone's recording, everyone's doing that. Which is amazing. So your skill set is already going to be just like stratospherically better than what was happening even 10 years ago, which is amazing. What I would say though is that adventure should be for yourself, not for like basically like, what's the nicest way to say this?
Not for the gram.
It's just, yeah, it can be. And we both share stuff that we do like on Instagram, and that's the right thing to do, because without that, ideas, knowledge, learning, is a great place to sort of see stuff happen.
It's not just about that.
It's not just about that.
Yeah.
It should be a byproduct of having an awesome experience outdoors. For future adventurers, also the pressure to perform, I think, is there as well. For people to get noticed, and just be really careful about what you're doing and why. And that would be my sort of like words of caution more than anything. It's like, it's okay to not do something that is like at the very highest end of adventure. It's okay. You should just be enjoying yourself.
Just for yourself.
For yourself, yeah.
I think that is a wonderful bit of advice. Yeah, Stevie, thank you so much for
worries,
having me
been
today.
fun.
Thank you for the lovely tea and the lovely cosy fire. Come and visit them. The space is incredible. If you're in East Lothian and you're based just outside of Dunbar.
Yeah, just outside Dunbar.
Yeah, and all I needed to do was pop in Ocean Vertical into Google Maps and it just brought me to your front door.
That's it.
So, thanks again, Stevie. I loved that conversation with Stevie Boyle, and I really hope you can hear why this felt like the right place to open season 2. Because beneath the experiences, the coast, the boards, the journeys, Stevie keeps returning to one central idea. Adventure isn't about what we take from wild places, it's about how we show up in them. The decisions we make, the humility we bring, and the responsibility that grows with experience. What stayed with me the most was Stevie's honesty about mistakes, about ego, about learning the hard way, that confidence without preparation really can be dangerous, and that true leadership and adventure isn't about being followed forever, it's about helping others become independent. Starting this season on the East Lothian coast, a place that shaped my own love of adventure, felt right. Because this conversation isn't about chasing something new, it's about returning to what matters. So if this episode resonated with you, I'd love it if you could support the podcast. Subscribe, follow, leave a review, share it with someone who'd enjoy it, or drop a comment. Every single one of those things really helps build Adventure Unfiltered and the community around it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and join me next time for more. So until next time, breathe deeply, keep adventuring, and don't forget, in the wild, we remember who we are.